Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Success. We've been on a bit of a journey over the last few months. We've spoken loads about compliance and regulation. Obviously, with the grey listing here in South Africa, it's been sort of top of mind. We've also spoken in depth about payments. We've spoken about crypto. We've spoken about stable coins. Today, we're going to take a slightly different journey and to a kind of a new category. And I'm joined by two guys who probably don't need much of an intro. Definitely not one of them anyway. But I'm going to hand over to them, and they can give a quick intro. Deon, let's start with you. Tell us a bit about you. Tell us a bit about the business, and then I'm going to hand over to your one of your co-founders. I know the other one's
Yeah.
not on the call today, but I will do hand over to Mr. Habana shortly. But Deon, over to you, man.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, great to be on the chat on the series. I think yeah, definitely. I'm not the famous co-founder. I was his roommate, but I'll let him tell you a bit more about that back in the day at university.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we from a company called Paymenow. We founded in 2019. It's a concept within the industry called EWA, and that stands for Earned Wage Access. Something that we didn't invent, and we, quick to say that, we'll give credit to where credit is due. This is an industry that started in the US about 2014, 2015. We came across it in 2019. I spoke to my co-founders, Brian being one of them, and I said, guys, I think we've got the technical ability to pull this off. Myself and the other two co-founders, we come from a fintech background, from an investment banking background, from a tech background. And we knew that a solution like this that was already being very successful in the US and the UK, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the offering. We knew that if we could mold it a little bit for the emerging markets, South Africa would be an incredible opportunity to really make a positive impact. And, like any entrepreneur, initially you just think of the business case and can this make money and are we going to retire one day off of this? But I think what was really incredible about the journey we went on is that positive impact we're making in people's lives. And this whole concept around, and I know it's really fluffy, of purpose over profits, but that's really something that's, we hold dear. And it potentially wasn't how we started. Like I said, we're a bunch of guys, entrepreneurs. We want to do, do something cool. But like I said, as soon as we started realizing the impact that we're having in people's lives, and like I said, we'll get into that.
yeah.
That's actually what gets us excited every morning. So yeah, very excited to tell you about what we do. But I'll quickly hand over to my very close mate and co-founder, Brian.
Well, before you do deal, but Brian, listen. As I said, most people aren't listening to this. It's not going to need too much of an introduction. However, we do have a young audience or younger audience that have been tuning in because we did a very short series on sort of fintech for kids. And I was driving the other day in the car and I said, listen, I've got to my niece and nephew who are about 13, and I said to them, listen, guys, do you know someone called Bryan Habana? And they went, no. I went, oh, okay, all right, okay. Well, I'm kind of got him on the podcast. I went, oh, that's nice. And then they went back to their AirPods and playing on their iPads, and that was it. So, Brian, for people that perhaps are maybe a slightly younger generation that may not have seen you, who are you? What do you do? You played a sport at some point, I
Yes,
believe.
I'm probably the millennials Chase and Colby or Makazoli Mapimpi. The old guard, to be honest, Darren. Yeah, very fortunate to have represented South Africa over 100 times over the course of just more than 12 years. I think as a kid that got inspired by the game of rugby at the 1995 Rugby World Cup, and my wildest dreams were far exceeded getting the fortune and privilege to don that Springbok jersey for as long as I did. Win a few trophies, score a few tries, and create a career that really allowed me the platform to make the transition period. That is probably one of the toughest environments for any professional athlete. When I did retire from rugby in 2018, and to Dion's point, when you have a network, when you have friends group, and Dion did approach me with this concept called earned wage access back in 2019. He'd also approached me with a lot of concepts, in the 20 years that we'd been friends, opening bars, doing
Right.
various other things, which I very politely declined. But given the fact that he was the MC at my wedding, a trusted friend, one that introduced me to my now wife back at university,
Oh
I sort
wow.
of gave him
Okay,
gave him
amazing.
a bit of opportunity to give me a bit more insight into this EWA on-demand pay environment that he'd come across. And sitting in Japan in 2019, when Sia Khaleesi and the Springboks were winning that Rugby World Cup, Deon and our other two co-founders who'd had worked with Deon previously, and for me, also then just formed a trusted network and relationship, was something that I sort of looked at, not having anything concrete in this transition period, year on from retiring, and thought that there was a massive opportunity to be able to really get to the grindstone, have this thing called a corporate lifestyle actually start taking place, and sort of give myself a different focus and a different purpose. And 5.5 years later, it really has blown our minds. And as grateful as I am for everything that rugby's given me, I think the manner in which Paymenow is so positively impacting people's lives that are so financially excluded, it almost makes me as proud of what I've done in the last 5 years in comparison to what rugby gave me. So it's been an incredible journey. Deon did mention we were university roommates. Darren, I started studying
Yeah.
BSc IT back at Rand Afrikaans University. Deon was my roommate. He was studying Brit, which was engineering and IT. I unfortunately just became a little bit lazy. Rugby took over, so I didn't finish my degree. Deon went on to get his honors. We spent a lot of late nights, him helping me. That is not the reason why I'm CEO of the company. I think his corporate CV just unfortunately gave him a step or two above the ladder than what I had with a zero corporate ladder CV on mine. So we are extremely competitive, but I'll give him the fact that he's a pretty brilliant CEO.
Well, listen, let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. I think from your side, Bryan, you obviously impacted millions of people through your rugby career here in South Africa, and I'm sure you had a big overseas following as well. And now to what you're doing now, and a very different type of impact. But again, this is what you guys have built, and I think a lot of people talk about financial inclusion, and it tends to be a bit of a buzzword in the industry. And where every website you go on, people talk about financial inclusion. But I think what you guys are doing, and I'm not going to spoil the party. I'm going to let you guys talk it through. But from what I understand, you guys really are helping a lot of lower income earners, as well as, and I know your platform works across all levels, but you're really helping people not only from a platform perspective, but also from the supports perspective that you guys give. It's not just an automated system with a bot that's answering questions. This is real, and this is tangible, and this is something that I don't believe can be replaced by AI or bots. I've said a
Yeah.
lot. Deon, maybe you want to give a really high level overview on what the offering is, and then Bryan, I'll hand over to you in terms of maybe some case studies or some ideas of where this is used and how it's actually helping people in their lives.
Yeah. Darren, and I think you'd mentioned one thing around the support we give people, and I
Yeah.
always used to joke with Brian. I said the service, the tangible, the people support that we actually give to our end users is an often case better than private banking service, and we're giving this to people that are earning on average less than, in some instances, way below 10,000 Rand a month. So we're actually giving, when it comes to financial inclusion, we really are using tech to the best of our abilities and bringing a service that I don't even get from our private bank. And that was always something that was very important to us. So yes, we want to make a positive impact in people's lives. We want to drive financial inclusion. But if you are not giving that brilliant customer experience, it's really tough to remain competitive. But let me rewind a little bit. So yes, we do. We call Paymenow. The name sounds quite cheesy, but it really does 100% explain what we do. So earned wage access, which is the industry that we fall under, effectively at the nuts and bolts, at the core, gives people access to a portion of the salary that they've already earned throughout the month. So where most people get paid monthly, but expenses happen daily, there's that massive disconnect, and we'll probably climb more into the problem, what that we are solving, and I'll let Bryan maybe take that. But effectively, if I get paid at the end of the month, but middle of the month I've got a financial emergency, what are the options that I have? Now, if you do look at case studies and statistics out there, 1 in 2 South Africans make use of unsecured lending just to make ends meet throughout the month. Another interesting stat is that 7 out of 8 South Africans have a bank account. So we've got really good banking penetration in the market, but only 1 in 8 qualify for formal credit. So 1 in 2 are living off of unsecured loans, but only 1 in 8 are getting formal credits. So where do these people go? And the formal lending space in South Africa isn't also that much better. It's extremely expensive, and there are a lot of reasons for it. So middle of the month, if I've got a financial emergency, where do I turn to? And the options obviously aren't great. So what Paymenow does is we're a service provider or a platform to the corporates, and that is our clients. So, and I think we use an example like a Pick and Pay or a Boxer or a Fushini Group, ShopRite, some of these kinds of guys. We'll integrate our service into their payroll, and effectively it allows their employees to then draw down a percentage of their daily wages as they earn it throughout the month. So this is not a loan, and that's the really big differentiator between earned wage access and I would say the unsecured lending space that we're looking to disrupt. So a person can log in, get access to a portion of that daily rates, and that money goes into his bank account where his salary gets paid. So it's super secure, and he pays a tiny fee. And that is really where we are. So firstly, it's inclusive because everyone now suddenly qualifies. Like you said, it's whether you are the packer at the till at Pick and Pay or if you are the MD of the business.
Yep.
Everyone now gets the same service at the same fee structure, which is incredible. So that's inclusive. It's everyday lowest price because effectively we can now represent hundreds of thousands of South Africans. We can go negotiate the best possible rates when it comes to liquidity, when it comes to food, electricity, babysitting vouchers, etc. This is what we do on the platform. And that allows people to get the best possible price. Actually, 1 in 2 of all our transactions are at 0 fees, which is also incredible. We then bake in financial education. I'll let Bryan maybe talk about a bit more about that. That really differentiates us from the competition and also from earned wage access globally. And I'll let Bryan talk on that. And then, like you said, we're servicing people that previously did not get access to financial services like this. So how do we make sure people use it responsibly, and how are we there to support it? And in that, we give this really private banking service through the app. We've got a great support team. We do make use of a bot, but we all know that a bot can only get you that far. So we still have warm-blooded people on the other side of the computer that can actually solve problems in all the official languages. And then we even take it a step further. We say, even tech, even support, even being 10 times cheaper, that also doesn't solve everyone's problems. So in our app, we also have a toll-free line that actually has qualified financial consultants that guide people through financial queries, mental queries, legal queries, and that's all baked into the platform at 0 fees. And our platform is data-free. So inevitably, what we've done is we've removed all barriers to entry. We've given everyone a solution that's fair, it's responsible, it's affordable. And then the last little thing that we've built, of course, we're helping people on this journey. There's even a frictionless, no barrier to entry, Allen Gray savings product in the app at 0 fees. So we're saying we're giving you a lifeline. And if you save money through this journey, don't just try and save it yourself and put it under the mattress. Click a button, put the money in a money market account, no fees, you earn interest. And we just think that really ties a ribbon around the entire offering. So it's financial wellness at the end of the day. It's not just earned wage access.
Bryan, before we hand over to you, Deon, there's something you mentioned right at the beginning about sort of the banked and the unbanked, or the banked here in South Africa. I think South Africa is very proud to say that 80% of the population has bank accounts. We all know that the usage of that bank account typically is salary in. Next day, queue up at the ATM, withdraw your salary, and then it becomes fiat, or it becomes cash. With the solution that you guys have built and have put in, are you finding there is sort of less, I don't know whether you have this data, but there is less of a tendency to go and make that huge withdrawal because obviously it's unsafe, there's no interest on it, and for other reasons it's not great for the economy. Are you finding that actually, because of the education you're providing to the consumer or to the employees of your clients, that they're less inclined to go and sort of do that and keep their money sort of digital, if we can call it that, without getting into the world of digital assets? But are you finding that at all, or do you not really have the data to support that?
So I'm going to let Bryan answer that because he tells a great story, especially around the transport situation.
Yeah.
But I think just maybe before I hand over to Bryan, Paymenow is not just in South Africa. We're in 5 different countries. We most recently launched in Pakistan as well, which is a really exciting market.
Wow.
But we have built the product very bespokely for the market that we're in. So the Paymenow solution in South Africa works in a certain way. In Uganda and Zambia, for example, the majority of the usage actually goes through mobile money. So we've
Yeah.
actually integrated based on what the people need and how that market operates. But I think from a South African context, I'd love to hand over to Bryan. He tells a great story around just how people are really interacting with our product.
Amazing.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So I think when Deon first sort of approached me with this concept, Darren, it very much sounded like a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I was like, no, it's not quite linking to my brand and who I'm about. And when we started doing a little bit on R&D, and for me as a person who'd obviously been earning a lot of money, as a professional athlete, but getting to grips with what the actual environment around how financially excluded people were in South Africa, it was such a weird concept for me to almost get into. Okay, well, people are living daily needing cash in hand. Like, I hadn't had cash in hand because you all there's like the post industrial revolution. Everyone wants to go digital, and as we started doing this research, understanding how sort of 70 to 80% of a workforce needs a 20 Rand in the morning to get into a taxi, to then work, to earn money, to have 20 Rand to get back home. And when they get back home, they probably need between 50 and 100 Rand to buy food, not just for themselves, but the family of 6 to 8 that they're looking after. It really became apparent how financially excluded people were. And to Dion's point around a monthly salary is probably great to optimize from an employer perspective. When you are having hundreds, if not thousands of staff, to do a daily, weekly, fortnightly payroll is just administratively cumbersome. But what that does is creates a
Yeah.
massive disconnect because those that are financially excluded, where the month just becomes too long for the money they've earned, where do they have to go? And the alternatives are very predatory, very abusive, and sometimes detrimental. And not just to that individual, but to the organization, because all of a sudden people can't come in. So when Deon did approach me, we needed to understand from an R&D perspective, how do we potentially do earned wage access differently? Talking to a specific market segment in South Africa that not only is financially excluded, but financially illiterate as well. And we then looked at what Vitality were doing for physical health and incorporated that into a financial wellness perspective, making sure that as people log on and register on Paymenow for the very first time, they actually start going on a financial wellness journey. And as they go on this journey through financial education, modules in the app, doing a credit score, doing a budgeting, they then unlock a little bit more of the access percentage that the organization has given them access to, which means that we're not actually giving them access to the full cookie jar from day one. We're taking them on this journey, and in so doing, getting them upskilled, getting them financially literate, giving them this private banking suite type service, but really financially including them and upskilling them in a way that hopefully allows them to start making better decisions at best in market price points, which for us has been phenomenal. It was a real key, unique selling point that differentiated us from earned wage access, not just in South Africa, globally. Made us win awards, made us really become attuned with where we're at, and in so doing, gave us a really great impact.
Guys, can I just ask you in terms of the practicality around this? There was just a few questions going through my head when Bryan, you were talking just now. So I'm working at Pick and Pay as an example. I'm earning 10,000 Rand a month. I've worked for sort of 7 days. Let's use round numbers, 10 days. I've earned a portion of that 1,000 Rand, or whatever. My maths is not great, whatever that may be. I can then draw down that entire amount. How do you then educate the employee that actually you need to reserve some money because you've got some costs that you're going to have to pay? You might have to pay rent. You're going to have to pay for
Yeah.
for transport, for food. There comes that sort of responsibility there of someone coming in and saying, actually, I'm going to withdraw it all just because I want to go and buy X, and then not having sort of anything left for the end of the month. Are you saying that this platform works on kind of a drip basis? So as you're earning, you can then sort of pull down or draw down a percentage of that or the whole lot? How do the mechanics work?
Yeah. I'm happy to take that one. So, Darren, as I explained, this is not a loan. So, on the
Yeah,
first day of the month, as your Paymenow cycle starts, the person's available balance is zero. And every night, the app ticks over and it gives that employee access to that percentage of his daily rate, effectively what your daily rate would be. So you
Okay.
said the 10,000 Rand example. Normally, we work this off of the person's net pay so that we also take other considerations into account. So let's
Okay.
say your 10,000 is your net pay.
Yep.
You would get access to 20, 25%. Now, again, the corporate is in control. We give a blank platform and we sit with their payroll, their HR team. They know their staff the best. They know who needs what. We can set up different profiles for different categories within the employee sort of pool.
Yep.
And then so the employer really understands their staff better than we do. We obviously come with industry knowledge and we share and we collaborate and we build what makes sense. We put in the guardrails. But let's say it's 20%. So you will get access to at most 20% of that 10,000 Rand throughout the course of the month. So yes, you said drip feed. It accrues daily up until a point in the month. And the person obviously doesn't have to use the full amount that gets made available. And that's really interesting. Some of the stats that we've seen over the last 4.5, 5 years is that the average employee gets access to 25% of their net pay throughout the month, but they only use about 15%. Now, that was really interesting for us.
Yeah.
People aren't eating all the cookies from the cookie jar because where earned wage access is treated different to a loan. Unfortunately, in South Africa, people look at loans historically as extra money. Um, Maybe I won't pay back this one this month and I'll close this bank account and I'll change my cell phone number. And it's almost like your credit score isn't as important, or in the developed markets, people do whatever they can to protect their credit score.
Yep.
It's not quite the same here. So when you've now got a product where what you use will come off your salary at the end of the month, people start treating this money a lot more responsibly. So that's the one almost, fundamental element around that. You cannot duck and dive whatever you use on the system. The second thing is the employee doesn't get access to that full 20%. If Pick and Pay said 20% is the limit, we actually start them on a portion of it in month one. And to Brian's point, you got to go through this gamification of do a credit score, do a financial health check, do a budget, learn more about fundamentals of savings, learn about financial documents. We've got all these cool education modules that keep coming through on an intra-month basis. So you really take someone on a journey. But bottom line, what we found is that the average person, even though they get access to that limit, they very seldom use the full amount. And it's never more than that 20 or 25%. And again, that's fully controlled by the employer. So we're not seeing people use Paymenow to buy plasma or LCD screens or LED screens or holiday deals. It's really utilized, and we've got the data. The average person uses Paymenow 2 times a month for cash, anywhere between 300 and 400 Rand. So we're not talking thousands of Rand. And then they use about 250 Rand in three transactions, totaling 250 for electricity, data, and food vouchers. So that's
Right.
where we're really seeing the usage. This is not thousands of Rands. This is, I need money for transport, because we actually ask them why they're cashing out on the app. And, they often say, how do you get data from people? Well, just ask them. Why are you cashing out? We give them a list of options. It's sort of randomized, so they don't always click on the same one. And they actually tell us, we are using the cash out for transport. It's almost 40% of all or cash out reasoning is for transport. And then, like I said, in our app, you can also get access to food, electricity, data, baby vouchers, clothing vouchers, and these come at zero fees, which is also, it's revolutionary. Middle of the month, you don't have money in your bank account. What do you do if you need electricity?
Yeah.
Well, probably going to have to go borrow or use your credit card if you have a credit card. And then the bank still charges you a fee. So you have to have the money, and then they still charge you between a 1 and a 2 Rand transaction fee to buy the electricity. We're saying it's the middle of the month, you don't have any money in your bank account, but you've earned it. I'll give you 50 Rands worth of electricity on the 15th, and only 50 Rand will come off your salary at the end of the month. And that's because we go and represent almost 500,000 people in South Africa alone. We go to the electricity aggregators, the data guys, the big retailers of groceries, and we say, let us buy from you in bulk, give us a small discounts so that we can at least, have a business that's sustainable,
Yep.
and the consumer benefits. So it really is it's a low margin volume game, but we need to do it responsibly. And that's really this whole financial wellness
And then maybe
element.
just on that, Darren, if I can, sorry, Darren, if I can maybe jump in there. And I think,
Yeah, please.
as an organization, sort of when Deon involved me, I was always the one kicking back on certain business decisions, purely based on, I'd been working with the likes of an HSBC, a MasterCard, a Land Rover, my own personal brand and what I was still doing. So there was this element of, as any organization, yes, we have to be for profit, but how do we then do things from a for good hat on? And I think firstly, in the way that we sort of use financial education as a really key driver in doing earned wage access differently, that got us included into a initial early stage um, sort of campaign with an organization called the Catalyst Fund, who are backed by JP
Yep.
Morgan, UK Aid, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. And that just gave us an understanding, as you get into an accelerator program that helps you think about what your startup journey is, where you're going with this journey, but how you make business decisions. And Deon went to our first ever launch 8 days before hard lockdown in March 2020. And one of the big initial tough selling points was when they said, okay, well, you got an app. People don't have a smartphone. And Deon and our head of digital sort of went to this. It was in the agricultural space. They went in there. The security guards sort of blocked them from going in to do the launch of Paymenow, our very first client, because it was COVID. They'd come up from Cape Town, and they had to go do it at the Wimpy at the garage across from the office. And all of a sudden, people were taking out
Wow.
like 2 or 3 devices. So yes, they had a feature phone, but they had a smartphone, a pencil tablet. So a lot of those initial ideology that the corporates were having in terms of asking us the questions, which we didn't have the answers to, we really started getting data from engaging with the end users. But then decisions around
Yeah.
really wanting to say, listen, we are financially inclusive, so yes, have a USSD platform, which is great if a person does have a feature phone. But one of the biggest drivers that has actually
Yep.
made Paymenow successful is we made a decision as an organization, which obviously cost us an OpEx line, but we've made the app data free. And when you talk about inclusivity, and on a Sunday night, when somebody does have a financial emergency, they can't run to an ATM, they can't go in, they don't have data, which is a problem a lot of blue collar workers have on a daily basis. They don't have data. So we made a decision as an organization. If we truly want to represent this for good element in our thinking and consideration, it's going to be a cost to us as a company, but we're going to become even more inclusive 24/7, 365 days a year for those who are the most excluded. And I think it's in this continual journey of looking at the landscape that we're engaging with, looking at the USPs that we feel make us stand out above the rest, but making real business decisions about, as we become innovative, as we continue adapting and moving forward, how do we really at the core remain a for good company? And the greatest thing for me, and rugby was great, but the fact that I can go to bed, every night, put my head on the pillow and know I'm making a significant impact in people's lives who would have never had the type of impact that Payment is giving them. And the fact that we are doing it, with this for good hat constantly as a consideration is something that, you wake up every morning and you're pretty proud to be going into the office.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, guys, it's a remarkable story. I've got one question because I appreciate you guys are busy and we're running out of time as well. Actually, I've got two questions. First of all, is the voucher element of the platform. I guess that's really, really important because if you're living in an area where you don't have access to an ATM without having to go and get transport to take you to an ATM, having that ability to go and buy a voucher, whether it be airtime, whether it be food vouchers or whatever it may be, that's obviously very, very critical to the whole sort of ecosystem that you guys have built. Do you also have an ability to send vouchers to a third
Yeah.
party? So, for example, could I
Okay.
send a voucher to
Yeah.
my son or daughter or mother or
So,
father? I can do
so
that as
I'm going
well.
to take this one here because when we started having this value added services product suite discussion in our offices, I was very resistant. I'm like, guys, we're deviating from what our model is. It's earned wage access. We need people giving access. I'm like, bears of vouchers is never going to be a thing. Safe to say I've been proven incredibly wrong over the last while. And I think, as we started doing this process, firstly from a KYC perspective, understanding that we really take security as a paramount consideration for Paymenow. So making sure that that person not only securely registers, through the identifiers that only they would know, the two-factor authentication of the OTP. But we then also said, to your point, a person living, in a distressed environment where they're looking after between 8 or 10 family members might need to send a voucher on to someone. So firstly, how do we securely send that to the person that has been KYC'd and verified on Paymenow, but then allow that person to really become able to send it to anywhere in the world, anywhere in South Africa at that moment in time. And I think that ability to have a secure process that allows people the access to vouchers, but then give that person the responsibility and the pride to be able to then on send that to family members that can then go. So, if I've got a family member up in Johannesburg and they do have an emergency, and there's a Boxer close by, or there's a Pick and Pay or a Usave or Checkers, whatever that might be, I can get that voucher in my personal capacity, going through that, authentication and security, and then on send it to them, not having to worry about the stress of, to Deon's point, do I get into a taxi? Do I have money in my bank account? Where do I go? Which is pretty cool. So Deon and the team know, I've said on numerous times, VAS is now a thing, and it's probably the proudest part of our platform, because literally at zero fees, everyday lowest price, people would not get it anywhere else in the market.
And Bryan, the receiver of that voucher doesn't necessarily have to be on Paymenow, or they have to
No,
download the app in
no,
order to use
no,
that, or QR code, or something
no.
like that, or how does it work?
Yes, it's just a voucher code. And again, to Dion's point, we've got this, bulk buying
Right.
power where we go to the various suppliers and again get the right information that the user that firstly, gets it on Paymenow before on sending it can then relay that information to the person receiving the voucher. But because of the relationships and the trust that we've now built with, the suite of value-added service suppliers that we've been engaging with over the last 2.5 years, the trust that you're able to form, and because Paymenow is now a thing, we're processing, more than 500,000 transactions a month now on the platform. Some great engagement with our suppliers, and there is a understanding that Paymenow is something. So, yeah, there's definitely no barrier to entry. And as we continue to grow, the more retailers will get to know who we are, and hopefully, in so doing, make that ease of use even easier.
And to finish off, a little birdie told me that you guys hit a bit of a milestone event about 10 days ago or so. Deon, your little announcement?
Yeah, no, I mean, so we've got this incredible dashboard where we're able to monitor in real time all the transactional activities on PayMeNow. And the last time we actually met with you was the day that we passed the 10 millionth transaction mark since we've started PayMeNow. And I mean, an interesting point, Bryan said doing over 500,000 transactions this month. We would have done just close on 600,000 transactions by the end of this month for the month alone. Compared to March 2020, when we did 61 transactions for the entire month. So just to give you an idea, the J curve has been looking pretty decent. But I think, again, to Bryan's point, since we started PayMeNow, as we've grown and have been able to, negotiate better and better rates from the upstream providers, whether it be, funding, whether it be suppliers, we've almost halved our fees, and in some instances, like I said, zeroed our fees throughout this journey. So it's never been a case of how do we maximize, how do we squeeze the most amount of margin. It's always been, this is a volumes game. We're super proud of the fact that we are processing. I mean, in the next few months, we'll be doing 1 million transactions a month. We're churning through billions of rands a year through the platform and growing. And this is just SA alone. As I mentioned, super excited about what's happening now already in Namibia. Zambia has been going for almost 2 years. Uganda just kicked off. Pakistan's just gone live. We've got a few more exciting territories in the pipeline. So it's definitely a case of we're trying to grow and leapfrog. We know that we're great at technology. We've got incredible partners enabling our growth through those various jurisdictions. And we'd love to see how we can get to a point where, at the end of the day, it's the consumer, it's that employee that wins. And as we grow, we are able to do that. So it's not a case of, we want global domination because it's, purely profit. It's, we want to do this because through the scale of the business, the consumer wins. And sure, we're a bunch of co-founders and, the business also does well. But if you can do that in a sustainable manner, I mean, it's good.
Listen, you guys have spoken a lot about sort of the morals, the for good, the sort of the ethical impact. I'm putting myself now in kind of an enterprise, going, this is kind of a no-brainer. Like, why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't I offer this to my staff? I'm enabling them to not only have access to funds that they typically wouldn't have had access to,
Yeah.
but I'm also removing that really awkward conversation that happens, perhaps maybe in slightly smaller businesses where, employee has to go to line manager or boss and say, listen, I'm a bit short. Can I have an advance? It's a horrible conversation to have. And this platform completely takes that out. It makes people, I think, feel more empowered, more in control, and more confident, I think, about how they can go about their daily lives. So, guys, you don't need to hear it from me. There's lots of other people that are singing your praises, but to really talk to two people that really have got financial inclusion in mind when they built a business, and are still striving towards that, I think is amazing to hear. And I wish you the very best of luck. I'm going to get you guys on again, and we can talk about transition from
10,
rugby to
well,
fintech.
or from
I'm
10
sure we've
million
spoken
to
about
20
it a
million
million times.
transactions, Darren.
There you go. That's even better, right? Or from 5 countries to 50 countries. I think that's a good one, right? But
Yeah. Starting a
guys,
business from a garage, we actually did that, and during COVID, there's a lot we can tell you.
I'd love
I
to hear
started
that.
with hair. I started with hair 4 or 5 years ago.
All I'll say, Deon, is that's what happens when you become a founder, right? I had dreadlocks. No, I'm joking. But guys, listen, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. If people want to
Thanks,
look you
Darren.
up, obviously you've got the website. You guys are quite active on social media as well. Certainly on LinkedIn, I've seen you guys a lot. So sort of reach out to you, your team. Kind of you guys are pretty much everywhere now. But if you've got if there's any sort of partners listening to this that or enterprises listening to this that would like to get some more information, feel free to reach out to the guys directly or reach out to me, and I can make an intro. And let's keep the good fight going. Guys, thank you again.
Darren, thanks for having us. Really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Darren.